Hello, class receiving students and teachers. May be seated. Now, class and the receiving students with the teachers. Before we go to our lesson for today, we will be having a look at the results on the chemical withering on limestones. Students in the model class, in the receiving classes, you were told there was a table provided, and you were asked to do daily observation, 2 days, besides the day of the experiment, and write down the changes that you see taking place in the limestone that you put in vinegar. Now we have the table, and day 1 is the findings actually on the day of the experiment. And what we found out was there were some bubbles seen coming from the limestone. Now, you were also to observe day 2 and also day 3. So let's see what you have for us today. I'll have from someone in the class your findings on the second day or day 2. Let's have Messi.
Day 2, some of the particles dissolved and leaving the inside to show.
Messi, how do you know that some particles dissolve from the limestone?
Because the water was a bit cloudy, dirty, showing that some of the particles were dissolved.
Okay, very good, thank you. Good. So that's an indication, Messi says, because of water that look cloudy. So she says some parts or some particles were dissolved from the limestone. Okay, let's see the third day. Shane, if you can tell us what you have.
From our findings, the rocks really shrank, and we could see as Messi explained earlier, there were a lot of particles at the bottom, and the water started to go a little bit more cloudy than before.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. A lot of particles in the beaker and water more cloudy. Now we have the last column to fill, and that says, give a reasons to the changes that has taken place. Receiving students, you can discuss about that, tell your teacher and model class 2 as well. And I will have Hayano, if you can tell us why the changes took place.
Our recent our day 3, we had cracks on it, so I'll do the reason for day 3. Okay. The reason we came up with is that when the vinegar reacted with the limestone, it took out little particles each day that made the cracks.
Okay, so she says, okay, briefly with what Hayano has said, the changes that took place made her friends and herself to come up with a reason, being that the vinegar, we know vinegar is an acid, so when it was added to the limestone, it dissolved or took away some particles or some parts of the limestone. I'd like us to have a look at the picture we have. We have rainwater plus dissolved carbon dioxide that produces acidic water, and when that acidic water seeps through cracks in the limestone, it dissolves some parts of the limestone. Now, limestone, we know its base, and when acid is added, it reacts, and that's where it dissolves the limestone. Now, when a lot of the limestone is dissolved, and this doesn't take a short time. It takes thousands and millions of years for the acid water to dissolve parts of the limestone. And eventually, in the end, there are some landmarks that we have formed due to acidic water dissolving some parts of the limestone. If I can have someone to tell me, what do you think these landmarks are? Some things are formed when acidic water gradually dissolves limestone over thousands of years. Let's see, Paul, Simon.
Caves.
Caves, very good, thank you. Paul, if you can tell us why you say caves. Why do you say caves? Help him.
Because those are landmarks.
Good, those are landmarks. That's what Paul says. Anybody else from the class who would like to help Paul? And also receiving students, you can discuss and tell your teacher. Anyone else? Yes, thank you, Quarry.
You go inside a cave here, you'll see limestones here.
Okay. Quarry says if you go into a cave, you can see limestones. Okay, good, thank you. Now, let's see what I have and what Paul has said, and some of you receiving students, you may have said the same or given the same answer. Limestone caves. Now, these limestone caves are actually made from the limestone over the years. Once it's dissolved, we have limestone caves. Now, thank you. Our topic for this lesson is metamorphic rocks and rock cycle. Now, metamorphic rocks is one of three main rocks. We've already had a look at igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and we will be looking at metamorphic rocks as well as rock cycle. Now, I have some pictures of rocks, metamorphic rocks, and you are going to identify which sedimentary rock you think forms these metamorphic rocks. And you also have to give a reason why you say that metamorphic rock is formed from the sedimentary rock that you give as your answer. Now, let's see, our first picture shows slate. Now, I want you quickly in your groups, which sedimentary rock do you think forms this metamorphic rock? The next rock is marble. You should be having your answers written on a piece of paper so we can go through it after we go through all of it. The next is called quartzite. Quartzite is one of metamorphic rocks. Which sedimentary rock do you think it's formed from? Now let's see what you have for slate. Which sedimentary rock do you think formed that metamorphic rock called slate? Anyone from the class? Carol, what do you and your friends have?
Conglomerate.
Conglomerate. Can you give us a reason why you say conglomerate?
Because conglomerates, stones are formed from large particles. So we saw that the picture, the stone had large particles.
Thank you. Teachers, this is brainstorm activity, so accept whatever answers the students give. Later in the lesson, they will learn what sedimentary rocks these metamorphic rocks are formed from. Marble. Helen, if you can tell us what you and your friends came up with.
Limestone.
Limestone. Why do you say limestone?
Because of the color, we think that it's made from shells.
Okay, good. Thank you, Helen. Okay, last one. Quartzite. Let's have Raymond to tell us what himself and his group came up with.
We think it's made of sandstone.
Sandstone. Why?
Because of the color.
Because of the color. Thank you. Now, as we go through the lesson, you will find out which sedimentary rocks these metamorphic rocks are formed from, and that can confirm whatever you came up with for this brainstorm activity. Now, I'd like us to have a look at the diagrams I have. Now we have two different diagrams. The first one shows a diagram of volcano. You have seen the same diagram earlier in the lesson on igneous rocks. And we have another at the bottom. Now, these two diagrams, they are all about the same thing because metamorphic rocks actually is formed during volcanic activities when volcanoes erupt. Now, metamorphic rocks actually change from original sedimentary rocks. And this happens when there is heat and pressure at the bottom or in the earth. In the earth, when there is heat and pressure, as the magma that is in the earth, when it pushes its way up, the heat, once it contacts, comes in contact with the sedimentary rocks, it changes those sedimentary rocks into metamorphic rocks. So metamorphic rocks are actually new rocks that are formed from old rocks, which are sedimentary rocks. So we have the diagram that shows us limestone becomes marble, sandstone, quartzite, and shale or mudstone, slate. And this all happens within the earth, inside the earth. Now, slate is formed from shale or clay. You have seen that earlier in the diagram. Marble formed from limestone. Quartzite formed from sandstone. Now our activity, our lesson topic is Metamorphic Rocks and Rock Cycle. So I would like the model class as well as the receiving students discuss together in your groups and explain what you think a rock cycle is. What is the rock cycle? Think back to the lesson we had on igneous rocks, then sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. What can you tell me about the rock cycle? Okay, let's have your answer before we go to the next activity, second part of the activity. Elisa, if you can tell me what you have together with your friends, what a rock cycle is.
Yeah.
Changes from rocks from one end to another.
Okay, changes of rocks from one end to another. Thank you. What do you have for us, Tanabik?
When rocks, when they are made and then they weather down, then they are made different rocks again.
Very good, thank you. Now we have our second activity. While you are doing this activity, that should help you to know the answer to the first question that we've just had, what the rock cycle is. Second part of the activity, you are to fill in the spaces with a list of words provided. And the words we have are all here. We have the words sediments, heat, igneous, cycle, metamorphic, surface, sedimentary, temperature, rocks, eroded, pressure, and magma. Now, this is what you are going to do. You don't have to write the whole paragraph down and fill in those empty spaces with those words. What you do, you write the rock cycle, write numbers 1 to 12, and choose the correct word that can go into each of those spaces. And you can start that now. Receiving students, the words that you are going to be using once again are on the screen. Model class, you have your worksheets, but with the receiving students, these are the words, so please take note of these words. Have these words copied quickly in your science workbooks. So these words will help you receiving students to fill the spaces. What's it? together, have it written. I have to bring that one over here. That one there will come over here for, yeah, that one. What I have? Class and receiving students, we should have already finished with that second part of the activity. I'd like us to have a look at the rock cycle quickly before we can go to where you have done that activity. The rock cycle, if you have a look at the picture, somebody from the class has briefly told us of what it thinks a rock cycle is. And here what we have, if we look up there, we have igneous rocks. We know how igneous rocks are formed. Okay, from magma from the volcano. Once volcano erupts, it goes, cools, becomes igneous rocks. Those igneous rocks are withered and are eroded down to the sea, where they are deposited in the sea. And as years go by, the sediments are pressured down deeper into the earth. And when there is heat and pressure, so much heat and pressure causes changes in the existing rocks, which are the sedimentary rocks, that become metamorphic rocks. And the cycle continues. It comes to where the rocks that are not changed, once the temperature is very high, they get melted, they become molten rocks again, magma, and it continues up to igneous rocks and round again. So that is a brief description of what the rock cycle is. Now I'd like us to have a look at activity, second part of the activity we did for this lesson, the rock cycle. Now what we are going to do, we can't have the words placed where the spaces are provided, as the spaces are too short. So I have numbers written 1 to 12. So where it's 1, we'll have you to look for the correct word from the list of words on the flashcards and put them next to each of these numbers. So let's have the first one. We will have Nanadai. Which word should go there? Nanadai, the first one, number 1. Find a word from the list on the flashcard, put it next to. Okay, I'd like you to put it properly so it doesn't. Daira, second. Thank you. Ted, Harold. Lina. Junior. From there. Thank you. Regina? Okay, if you want to correct it, do it quickly. Okay, thank you. Rico? Terrence, get ready for the next. Terrence, the fifth one, please. I didn't. Gail, next one. That word is missing. Gail, if you can put it properly, please. Nigel? Melin? Move quickly. Dovery, get ready for the next one. And we'll have Edward for the last one. Okay. Now, class scenario students, check to see that you have those words written in the spaces that you were supposed to fill. So let's just go through quickly. It says, magma from deep within the earth rises to the surface and cools to become igneous rocks. Rocks wither and are eroded to form sediments, which form sedimentary rocks. As layers of sediments build up, bottom layers sink deeper into the earth's crust, where heat and pressure change the sedimentary rocks into metamorphic rocks. Very high temperature melts the rocks to produce magma, and the cycle continues. And that is exactly what the rock cycle is, and that's what happens. Our summary points. Metamorphic rocks are formed when existing rocks, which are sedimentary rocks, are changed by the action of great heat and pressure within the earth. Now, metamorphic rocks are also formed during mountain building. So they don't only get formed through volcanic activities, they also get formed during mountain building. The rock cycle describes how rocks change from one type to another. Our last summary point says withering, erosion, pressure, heat, and remelting are processes that help to change rocks. One, if I can have you to give our key phrase for this lesson.
rock cycle.
Thank you. Let's see what I have. New rocks from old. That's our key phrase. Our next lesson will be on fossils and materials needed that their teachers take note of it and get your children to bring whatever they can for the next lesson. And with that, thank you, class, the receiving students and teachers for your participation.